Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple chat and talk about movies and TV.
Today we're talking about two older releases from earlier this year. I Saw the TV Glow and Challengers. So revisiting those from earlier this year. Finally got around to watching these. I did not watch them in theaters. Tasheena did.
Yes, so these are both movies that I really loved from the beginning of the year, and I really wanted Jonathan to watch them before we discuss, because I was on the fence about whether to have it in our mid-cap, our first episode we did, but I'm like, no, I want to wait.
Yeah, it was a good thing we did, because it's a lot more exciting to talk about things that we've both seen.
Yes,
Go figure.
I know. We're trying to get better at that, trying to schedule things out so we actually both can see them. So it's only once in a while there's a horror movie that I see that Jonathan's like, no thanks.
Yeah, right now it's hard to see anything together that we can't bring our daughter to, so it sort of limits our options. Not bringing our 9-year-old to Challengers, that would probably not be a good idea.
No, I think that would probably plummet our ranking on the good parent meter if we took her to see that.
Quite a bit.
Oh, before we go further, since these movies are old, we are just going to go in spoilers for both these movies.
Full spoilers, no warnings. If
Yes.
you haven't seen them, you can get them now somewhere, I'm sure.
Stop, go watch both these movies. They're great.
Yeah.
All right, so first we are going to talk about Challengers. Take it away, Jonathan.
All right. From visionary filmmaker Luca Guadagnino, Challengers stars Zendaya as Tashi Duncan, a former tennis prodigy turned coach and a force of nature who makes no apologies for her game on and off the court. Married to a champion on a losing streak, Tashi's strategy for her husband's redemption takes a surprising turn when he must face off against the washed-up Patrick, Josh O'Connor, his former best friend and Tashi's former boyfriend. As their past and presents collide and tensions run high, Tashi must ask herself, what will it cost to win? That is their own summary. I don't think that's a very good summary.
We actually start the movie in its present, which is 2019. And then pretty much we are beginning with the culmination of like all these three people coming back together. And it is interspersed by showing us how they got here, like their past with each other. I think this was actually a really good way to do the time jumping around thing.
Very Nolan-esque in how many time jumps it was doing.
Yes.
And in the way it sequenced them, yeah.
But I think it was smartly done and rightly built up this event that we are seeing. Because I think it's pretty simple of a plot. So I think if it was like a straight narrative, I don't know if it would have the same impact. Because there's certain things that we are kind of like understanding certain dynamics within their relationship, but we don't have all the clues yet. And so as we're getting those clues, we're starting to understand why certain dynamics are taking place. And that built up tension for me.
Yes. And also I think it really serves to muddy the waters a bit and throw you off balance and keep you guessing, which is what the characters are doing too. There's lots of manipulation that goes on within the movie. And I think doing the time jumps back and forth to different areas throws you as the audience off balance a bit and makes you and immerses you in what the characters are feeling as they are trying to decipher what they want, what each other wants.
Mm-hmm.
And at the center of that is Tashi, played fantastically by Zendaya.
Yeah, this was a really good turn for her. Visually, also the back and forth in time is like tennis. The back and forth.
Yes.
So a lot of, I had to give it a look at the construction of this movie is great. Because I think tennis is boring as fuck. And not only that, it's very confusing. I've had tennis explained to me multiple times and nothing sticks. And usually in...
No, it's really not that bad.
Oh, no.
So we'll start off with...
So...
They have a ball.
Oh, no. I don't think I'm that much of a beginner. Like, I get some basics, like set match, all that stuff. But a lot of it is gone over my head. So I'm glad we did not have that scene in this movie where they're like, here's tennis. Luca's like, I don't give a fuck. Who cares if you know about tennis? This is what you need to know about tennis, which is portrayed in their bodies. Sport of tennis is just an extension of themselves and their physicality. You don't need to know a dang thing about tennis.
Right. And it's very effective at doing that. Yeah, basically through their expressions and their emoting, and yeah, you get everything you need to know about where the game's going. And they throw up some titles too, every once in a while. First set, second set, match point. It gives you a nice I don't know what that means, but this is important right there. So yeah, it's pretty easy to follow, even if you don't understand tennis.
It's so funny because I have seen some people like us who actually know and like tennis. They're out there, complain and bitch about this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I don't know if they're right, but honestly, I don't care. I don't care if this is nothing like actual tennis. I don't.
I mean, it makes it look sexy as fuck. So
yeah,
they better like it because it's gonna bring some young energy to the sport.
Oh man, we forgot the letterbox.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Because it actually ties into what I was about to say. So of course we talk a lot about thirst traps and tweets and stuff like that, and how Letterboxd is just filled with them. You can only imagine.
Oh yeah.
Letterboxd is just a chaotic mess with this movie. But I did find one that I thought just perfectly summed up from Hunter. This is the movie the Doom popcorn bucket was made for. Because this was pretty much edging the movie. We don't see sex.
Yes, I was gonna bring that up for a movie, as sexy a movie that it is.
Sex.
That is all about it. They blue ball you every single time.
Yes.
You think something's about to happen.
I think it's due to tennis actually representing that intimacy. And so if that's representing intimacy, I can see why he didn't really show sex on screen, because that moment at the end, that was the climax. That was the moment. And now that was when I realized, oh, that's why this was all boo balls. Because he was building up to that singular moment. And that singular moment is what sold me.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie, but it's one of those where it's building. So if it doesn't build to something satisfying, it's just going to leave you like, it's like, oh, that was good. But it's not something that's going to stay in your mind. That moment sealed the deal for me. And I'm like, I'm going to remember this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about ending on a high note.
Great. When Tashi first meets our boys, Art and Patrick, like they all kind of talk about like their philosophy and their view on tennis. And to Tashi, it is a relationship. Good tennis to her is intimacy. Like it almost is like for a moment you are in a relationship with the other person on the court. And I think that is represented very well in this movie. And you can see how deep the relationship was between Patrick and Art. Like when they played doubles, when they played against each other in the beginning, but it all comes together at the end because they're so not in sync with each other anymore. They're at odds, and then there's this moment where even though it's in anger at first, it just comes together. And I don't know what's going to happen to these characters, but that was a pivotal moment. Things are going to change.
Yep.
After that moment. Now, we can all, go on about what we think that might look like.
Polyamory. That's what it looks like, and that's what it should be, and that's what would have been so much more healthy for them from the beginning. If we're talking about from a purely relational standpoint.
Oh, truly, they should have been a throuple. But can Tashi be in a throuple? Because she liked putting those boys against each other. She wants good tennis. That's all Zendaya wanted, because Zendaya breaks her knee halfway through. So she can no longer get that good moment of tennis that she longs for. That's why she's in tennis. She wants that moment where you are in sync with the other person, just that scream that she does, you can just tell, like, this is sex for her. And when she breaks her knee, she can no longer do that. And so she wants one of these boys to do it for her, but neither can on their own. It's only when they play tennis at the end with each other that she finally gets that good tennis she's been looking for. Because let's be honest, she didn't seem too satisfied just being with one or the other.
No. And it begs the question is how many of her post-knee break actions, how many of those were her manipulating both of them to get them to this point? Because she knows how to push their buttons and knows how to position them where she wants.
Because when she's with just one of them, she becomes bored. I think she needs both of them in her life. And yeah, I think these three just need to be together. But because of the competitive nature, so Art, her husband, I think he seems definitely the more chill, more submissive one.
Mm-hmm.
Where he then has two other people that are extreme. Zendaya and Josh O'Connor have all the passion, but they're too much alike. They need Art to balance them out. Because if Zendaya is just with Art, that's too boring, though. Like, she needs both sides. And yeah, honestly, they are the perfect throuple. But can they actually be in it without being competitive? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know if it would actually work with the three of them.
Typically, that being that competitive does not lend to a healthy relationship when you're in a throuple. But they are some kinky motherfuckers, so maybe it'll work for them.
If they can understand themselves and their own dynamic, I think it could work. But that takes a level of understanding of themselves that, do they know? Are they able to maneuver that and see it through? It is interesting watching this movie and seeing how competitive they are. And then by extension, love being a competition. Because that's also the ugly side of monogamy, is love as competition. Because you, quote unquote, can only be with one person, then it becomes a game to a lot of people.
Right.
And that, I'm trying not to hate on monogamy because we're we're a married couple. But the jealousy, the competition, I always hated that shit.
Right. This basically all starts because they're so locked into this idea of a monogamous relationship.
Mm-hmm.
From minute one of second one of seeing her,
yes,
it's a competition of which one of us is going to win.
Yes,
and get the girl.
And for a second, they both think maybe we'll both win, and then Sydney's like, nah.
Yeah, that was the big tease is that threesome scene. Which was the entire trailer.
Yes,
it does not happen. Basically, she
pretty much tricks them.
Right.
And they kiss until they're all into it. And then the boys are just making out with themselves, not knowing that she's just like backed away and is watching them.
And then she leaves.
Because she says, I'm not a homewrecker. It's interesting because then they're like, but you can't quit them. It's interesting. She doesn't want to be the homewrecker, but she can't quit them because immediately she's like, well, whoever wins tomorrow, I'll give them my number.
I mean,
it's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was all part of her scheme.
Mm-hmm.
From that very first interaction, she's already manipulating them. And so they're playing their own game with each other of who's going to win the girl. And she's not just a passive along for the ride person in that game. She's like, no. She's playing her own game on a completely different level from them that they are not even aware of. But here they are thinking, oh, yeah, now I'm going to win. No, I'm going to. It's like, boys.
Oh, boys.
Neither one of you is winning. I'm winning.
Because again, she is trying to pull out the best tennis from them. That's part of why she pits Art and Patrick against themselves. She's a very complicated character. I think a lot of surface level readings of her is like, oh, she's just a bitch. But I'm like,
right.
No, there's a lot more here. Very complicated. I think Zendaya did a pretty good job with her. Because she seems so calculated and in control. I did like the moments where I think Josh O'Connor's character surprised her.
Which I think is what she liked about him, in that he could surprise her.
Yes.
Because every once in a while, he's able to sort of pinpoint her at least a little bit. He can't completely nail her down in terms of figuring out her game, but whenever he gets close, that really, I mean, that turns her on, right? That he can get close to that level, but he's still too much of a immature little, I don't know, fuckboy. Then he's still not at her level, but she likes that he can get close. And yeah, it's not until that they come together that they can get her what she wants.
She's just too much of a woman. There's just no way one man.
Too much of a woman. Man, enough for me.
So yeah, I just found it very interesting, especially seeing some of Lucas films. This is very different. He's a little bit more of a slow burn guy. He did the Suspiria remake, Call Me by Your Name. I think it was Bones and All was the last movie he did. And they're just very slow, very straight narrative too. That was when I remember seeing the trailers for this movie, I was like, the fuck? Like, it seemed so different, so mainstream compared to what he usually does. But watching it, I still saw like his handprint on it. It was just a different style from what he usually does. And I think it was a step in the right direction. I thought it was thrilling and I was into it. I really wanted to know what happens next because bodies were so important in this movie. The way he shot them, I thought was really good. Like just their muscles in action. That's why I think the slow.
A lot of sweat.
A lot of sweat. Man,
Sweat the movie.
Yes.
Sweat.
And so, because a lot of people complain about the slow-mo. But I think it was purposeful because he's trying, to focus in on the body. Also, my favorite slow-mo part was in the beginning where he's going to, like, defeat that tennis player who's kind of beneath him. And so they're doing the slow-mo, like, oh, we're gonna beat him. It cuts to them in the hotel room watching the end of that tennis match, and he got defeated. I thought that was a great cut.
It's got the music. A lot of great beats in this.
Yes.
Went to the Peaky Blinders school of slow motion, pumping that music, get you hyped up.
Like, slow-mo is great if it's used wisely, and I think in this movie it was.
Yeah.
Overall, I really like this movie. I definitely think it's going to be high up on my list of 2024 releases by the end of the year. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it too. I'm pretty sure Jonathan will take this one.
Yeah. It was very interesting. I wasn't sure, if I'd be into it from the trailers. It's like, I'll give it a shot. But yeah, it was very compelling from a story perspective, cinematically. A lot of great uses of the money shot at the end, where it has the camera angle that's like attached to the ball.
Yes.
As it's going back and forth. That was fantastic. Great way to like cap it off, because if they had overused that, I think you would have just gotten sick.
Yes.
So saving it for the end was really great. Really made you feel the energy.
Yeah, there's only so much ball POV we could probably handle as an audience. But yeah, it was used smartly. Also, there's just one shot where they're from underneath the tennis, and like the tennis court is a clear. And they go play on it.
Yeah.
I saw behind the scenes of how they did that. It's so cool. And it's only for like one shot, and they put so much effort into it, but it looks so neat. I loved it.
Yeah, I always love touches like that. Like that's when you can tell they're using their entire toolkit. It's almost like movies are a visual and audio medium, and you should use all these things.
And I think this is a good movie to show how visuals are meaningful. Because again, I said this story is pretty basic, but he uses the visuals to also tell the story to make it more compelling. And I think that really amplified the experience of this movie. I just really loved it overall. Also, I want more movies that have different relationship structures in it. I think that's also interesting. And also thinking about, should all three of them just be together?
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, there's definitely positives and negatives to both. That's the same with monogamous relationships. Like any type of relationship has pros and cons. It's just all about what works best for you. And honestly, I would be down to see more movies where people are trying to discover what relationship looks like to them. To me, that's compelling. Like, I'm so tired of love triangle movies.
Ugh.
I'm just like, be with both.
Let's get a love hexagon going.
I know.
Gotta add more corners.
And that was also one of the reasons I was a little iffy on this movie at first, because I thought that was just going to be
Love
just your
triangle.
standard love triangle. And I don't think it is. I think, honestly, probably the most compelling relationship in the movie is between the boys, Art and Patrick. Like, there's just, the amount of little details showing how close they are, their intimate relationship, even when they're having the churros at the cafeteria and Josh puts his foot underneath the other guy's chair and pulls him closer to him. Just little stuff like that. It just signals how close they are. And I wonder if it's because I believe they're both bi. And I wonder if that is like throwing confusion. Like they think, oh, we're just this close because we're bros. You know, I like girls. Because I remember going a lot through that in college and stuff like, oh, no, I don't have feelings for this girl. We're just girlfriends, you know? Because when you are bi, it's easier to like push off feelings you have for the same sex for a while until you're like, oh, wait a minute, not everybody feels like this.
Right, yep.
Like, oh, because no, I think they're about the same age as me in the movie. When in 2006, they're just starting in college. So they're like a year or two behind me. So yeah, they were going through the same thing where bisexuality was still kind of taboo a little bit. More like, oh, you're greedy. I heard a lot of like, oh, they're just being greedy. Can't you just choose if you're straight or gay? So there's still a little bit of a stain on being bisexual. And I don't think a lot of people considered that because it was like either or. Either you're straight or gay.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of the confusion probably Patrick and Art are having because they do like girls. They obviously like are head over heels for Zendaya. But I think they love each other too. I just like interesting dynamics. I like seeing people try to figure out who they are in their relationship to other people.
And also, would you say, I mean, it's such a wide spectrum. Obviously, anything's possible, but you can be someone who is bi, but for a certain gender or sex, you might only be attracted to a very specific person.
Yes.
So for them, maybe they're not bi in the way that they would be attracted to any other man, but
no. It's like
for each other.
Yeah, bi doesn't
Sure.
mean like you're 50% ladies,
Right.
50% men. There's a wide spectrum. There's some people are bi that probably 90% most likely go towards the opposite sex, but 10%.
The right person comes along, then
Exactly. And
you're
that's
open.
how I kind of feel like, yeah, I'm bi, but I probably lean heavier being attracted to men. But there are women where I'm like, oh, yeah, if circumstances were different, if I went down a different path, I could see myself being and marrying a woman, you know? I guess also that's why I like queer movies, because I think they do a better job of going beyond what are normal parameters for movies, like your typical rom-coms, and exploring more different relationships. Because honestly, we've kind of seen the same thing for almost 100 years now.
All right. So, second movie, very different.
Very different.
I Saw the TV Glow. This one is another summary that I don't really like, but here we go. Teenager Owen is just trying to make it through life in the suburbs when his classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night TV show. A vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack.
It's going to be really hard to talk about this movie without getting super personal.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this movie, it's just so deeply emotional. Where I understand why some people it just doesn't click with. Because if you don't find some in on an emotional level with this movie, it's just going to be super alienating,
Yeah.
which I totally get. I don't think that means, especially cis men should be.
Slur, you're blocked on X.
I know I'm blocked on X now. I don't think that means they should be dismissive of this movie, because I've definitely seen a lot of people who gave it 1 star are like, this is just pretentious slop, blah, blah, blah. It's mainly dudes. The allegory, it is about being trans.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic.
Yeah, it's a very specific
But I think
message.
even if you are not trans, there's so many things that could still connect you emotionally to this movie. Like I said, me being bi, like that's how I related hard to this movie. Because it's all about suppressing your true self.
Yes.
And there's multiple ways you can connect on an emotional level with this movie. Yes, the basic subtext, I do believe, is a trans allegory. But that doesn't mean you can't have different interpretations or you can't meet this movie at a different emotional through line. I think people just stopped for a moment. I think this is also a great movie for cis people, and in particular, to understand gender dysmorphia and how it feels to not feel right in your body. So even if on an emotional level you can't maybe find a way to resonate with this movie, I still think there's things here for people like straight white guys to understand, like how it feels like to be trans. That confusion, that not feeling home in your own body, like how all that feels.
Yeah, so straight white guy here. I completely agree. It's hard to say how I would have reacted to this movie if I went in blind, but I didn't. So my experience is, since I waited so long to see it, I knew what the artist's intent was going in, right? And obviously you can have, art doesn't have just one interpretation. There's the artist's interpretation and there's the viewers. But I that was at least in my head, so I couldn't help but think about that. I went into it knowing that's what I was going to be looking for. And I was sort of treating it as like an education piece, like to get me to empathize with a position that I would have normally never considered. And I thought I did a really good job at that. I was actually kind of surprised at some of the negative reactions from people who maybe didn't connect it. I still thought, even without that, I still thought it was pretty compelling. I mean, yeah, there's many different things you can get out of it. Maybe for someone who's strictly looking at it from a plot perspective and a sci-fi thing,
if you're looking at this for plot, go home.
It's going to end unsatisfactory. But that's true of most things that aren't just a face value sci-fi story. Now, obviously, I'm a sucker for any. I don't know if I would call this sci-fi, but it has what I like to call a movie with like a light sci-fi element that's just like, it's a good story, a character story, and then there's a little supernatural twist.
Even the horror element is like light. It's not. I think a lot of people went into this thinking horror movie, and I'm like, this is existential dread.
Yes. I'm always a fan of things where I just like watching things where there's something more to life or to reality than face value. So any kind of little supernatural sci-fi twist is always cool to me. So I thought even that was good. And then knowing the message, I thought it was really, really impactful.
Yeah.
And really makes you think about what that experience must be like for those who have to live it.
Right after my first watch that week, this movie put me through an emotional roller coaster. I felt like so many things were coming up to the surface, but I didn't know why I was having certain reactions to certain things, because I was both really drawn, but there was something that was like repelling me, and I was like trying to figure out like, what is it? And I think it has to deal with nostalgia. It's just so interesting because I feel like a lot of 90s kids went through this, where I know I had that show that I loved all my heart when I was a kid, to the point where I found other girls who loved it too, and we even cast ourselves at like certain characters in the show, and we would pretend to be them. And I picked a character that actually on the outside I probably wasn't like I think there was another character that I was actually probably more like. But I picked this character, wanted to be like her. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be powerful. And I wanted to have this gentle kindness about me. All this was like bubbling up. I was crying through a lot of this movie because all those feelings flooded back because one of the people in our group broke it up. And then I was made to feel embarrassed because of my love for this show. And so for years, every time that show was brought up, I just cringed. Like I felt embarrassment. And I think that part of me was almost like actively fighting against this movie in some way. Like I didn't want to believe Maddie. I'm like, no, that's crazy talk. That's nostalgia that's talking.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually this person. Instead of understanding like I wasn't wrong as a kid to love this person. I just wanted to be like them. I wanted to see myself in her, in this character. I don't know. I felt like this movie brought a lot of peace to that. Like there was nothing wrong in that. There was nothing wrong in a girl finding joy in something. Like it's not embarrassing. But I think a lot of things that we like as children, especially girls, people cast it in embarrassing light. This movie's just very important to me. And that's why I really wanted you to see it. And I was really hoping you would like it. I was scared because I know it's very different, very art house style, you know?
Yeah.
Very indie.
Yes.
So I wasn't sure how you were going to embrace it. Because like you said, it's not like it's plot driven at all.
Right.
Like
there's no explanations, there's no background, there's no exposition, there's none of that.
It is all about this character and what it does to a person when you cut out of a part of yourself. Even though there's a lot of different opinions about the ending, when he cuts his chest open and still sees the show, still sees it's there even though he's old and that it's not too late. I don't know. That part brought hope, but there's also such a sadness because he just kept going around saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all these people who don't even acknowledge him. He is hiding himself from people who don't give two shits about him. And it broke my heart because you want that moment. You want this moment where he's like, I'm going to accept myself. And you don't really get that. There's hope, but he's still bound by the perception of other people.
So when the movie ended, I don't like endings that I like resolutions. Not from it's just, I feel like in life, there's so many things unresolved. So generally in movies, I like resolutions. So my initial reaction was, fucking goddamn it. I can't believe they just did that. But having some time to process it, it was like, okay, no, that is how it should have ended. And it is important that it ends that way, especially as the trans narrative, just because you have that moment of seeing inside yourself, cutting yourself and seeing who you really are and getting the understanding. That is not the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm fixed now. Not how that works.
Because like we saw how he reacted to the other people. Like there's still things he has to process. Now.
Like that's just the beginning of the transition. Until that point, until completion. And maybe it never actually is complete. Maybe it's a journey you're going on your entire life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still then have to, until that is done, you have to go out and you have to put on, your face to the rest of the world.
Yeah. Even
though you're feeling a different way inside. And so with the ending, I think it was less about, because I think somebody had more of a pessimist interpretation of, it's just like before where he forgot.
No.
I don't think it was that. And I don't think I don't know if he actually cared when he was apologizing. I didn't interpret that as, he still cares what they think. With his motion of his body, with the tone of his voice, I think he had reached the point where he now was confident in who he was inside. He was not yet confident of who he was on the outside, but he knew who he was inside now.
Okay.
And with that knowledge, that gave him the strength to put on this face for the world and not worry about that being in conflict with who he was on the inside. Because that's what you have to do. Like, you have to put on a face. That's what we all do. We are all putting on a face to other people.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have that strong sense of self, when you are struggling with who you are on the inside, putting on that face can be very demoralizing and depressing because you feel like you're hiding who you truly are. But I think gaining that sense of self-confidence to know you are on the inside allows you to put on that face for other people. Oh, I'm not doing this for me. I know who I am, but I'll put on this face for you while I begin my journey. So I thought the ending was actually, the more I thought about that, actually, the more of a happy, quote unquote, ending it was. At least an optimistic ending. There was a lot of hope and a lot of optimism and a lot of energy.
Okay.
And that he was at the point where he knew that he could start the journey. It's still going to be a long and hard journey, but he could start it and have that sense of self-confidence in, okay, they don't know who I am yet, but I do.
Is he going to find someone to bury him? Oh, man. If you haven't seen this movie, I bet people are so fucking lost right now. I mean, it's really simple. These two kids just fall in love with the show called The Pink Opaque, and they both relate to the two main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Maddie and Owen. Maddie is pretty much on board with this feels more like reality than actual reality. And so she disappears and she comes back and tells Owen, the Pink Opaque is real. We are these characters, and this is what you need to do to become this character again, because pretty much this is a trap set by the bad guy in the show.
Yeah, they're like unconscious, seconds or years.
Yes, we are buried in the ground. We are slowly dying. It's seconds in our real world, even though it feels like ages here. The way they talk, it's not very expressive, and that is completely a director's choice. You could tell, like, everybody, it's just not that nobody expresses any emotion. It's just very muted.
Right.
And it makes sense if Maddie's story is true.
Yeah, it makes sense. They've had a part of themselves torn out.
Yes.
And even from the beginning, you're on board because you're like, okay, awkward teenagers, like it works.
Yes. Even like as you go through the adults, especially his dad. I think his dad is probably one of the more heartbreaking characters of this movie. He's emotionally abusive. He's distant from him. And the only time he says something to Owen is in their car. Owen asks hey, can I stay up and watch the show, The Pink Opaque? And the dad's like, isn't that a girl's show?
Mm-hmm.
So dismissive. That's like,
that's all you need. Yeah.
That's all I needed to show exactly what this dynamic is, what this relationship is. Because, yeah, you're going to definitely deal with asshole people like in your face, especially when it comes to trans rights. But a lot of it is those innocuous things people say. Those, I think, are the things that really put daggers into your heart, is when the loved ones around you dismiss your identity without even really knowing it. Can be very heartbreaking. Man, like I said, he only has one line in this movie. And it was so fucked up. It broke my heart.
Yep.
Was there any other elements you really liked?
Probably the most visually disturbing part was when you get the visual of Mr. Melancholy.
Oh, yes, because
very unsettling in a very weird way.
I think what we're led to believe is the reason why Maddie chose that moment to leave is she saw the season finale or the series finale of the show. And they left the series on a cliffhanger, which I'm like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I would have been mad too. But they show Owen watching the series finale. And so the big bad guy of the show, like you kind of see him a face in the moon, so he's more off. But in the scene, you see him up close, and the way he's done, people are like, "Dude, this is no horror movie." I'm telling you, that was probably one of the creepiest, horrific things I've ever seen. Was Mr. Melancholy up close, and when I saw that in the theater, I was just like trying so hard to lean back and get away from it.
Yeah, definitely like existential dread manifest. It's not your typical
yes
tentacled, slimy monster, creature thing. It's really more of a personified emotion.
Yes, because it is interesting how some of these things, when we first saw them, they look so cheesy and corny, because that's 90s kids television. But when we see the series finale through Owen's eyes, how even Marco and Polo, the twin, like they just came off even more creepier, ripping her heart out and then forcing her to drink that Luna juice where she's like bubbling up. Like all of it was just grotesque.
The actor, what's his name again?
Was it Justice Smith that played as Owen?
He did a really good job.
Yeah, because we've only really seen him in blockbuster type movies, like
Yeah, well, Jurassic World.
Detective Pikachu.
I think I'd rather watch Detective Pikachu than Jurassic World.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so I'd only seen him in mainstream blockbuster type movies. It was really nice to see him in something like this. Glad he got that money, and now hopefully he's doing stuff he wants to do, stuff that challenges him. Because he had to play a range of emotions, a range of ages. At the end when he's like the barely breathing, which could either be his asthma or the real him could be buried.
Or he's buried and suffocating. Yep.
It could be either one.
Yep.
I really think people should give this one a try. It's okay once in a while to expand your horizons.
Get out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
I think this is worthwhile. And again, don't worry so much about plot.
Nope.
Worry about the characters and the emotional arc that they are on, because that's what's important. Right now, this is my top movie of the year. And
okay.
Unless we have a surprise hitter coming in, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to knock this one to do. There's a lot to come close. There are probably like 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it would be for me. I didn't have a deep emotional reaction to it, so I had to go for more from an outsider's perspective, looking in what could I appreciate from it from that perspective. Still really liked it. So, like we were saying before, if you do have that personal connection, that sort of gut reaction, where it really speaks to an experience in your life, it'll probably just shoot it to the moon for you.
Yeah, especially if you've ever gone through a period in your life where you have buried yourself. I think this will really speak to you. It's the imagery of the movie. Sometimes it's hard to put into words how you feel. That idea of having your heart cut out and being buried alive.
Yeah.
I get that. That was a lot for me. This movie was seeing images where I'm like, I understand that. And so I feel like a lot of people are throwing the whole pretentious nonsense slop, just throwing stuff in there because it looks good,
Yeah, I thought everything had a very clear purpose.
Yes, and that's the difference. I think because we do have films like that are just pretentious nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I've seen Oscar bait films.
Oh, yeah.
This is not an Oscar bait film. No.
People don't know what they're talking about.
This is art. This is someone who wanted to convey real life experiences that are hard to put into words, into visuals, into storytelling. And I think she succeeded. There's a lot of people who are deeply touched by this movie. Open up your heart.
Yeah, obviously, you're allowed to not have a reaction to it. If you don't have a reaction to it, you don't have a reaction to it. So it's not like we're saying, oh, you have to like it or you don't understand art.
No.
But I think it deserves more respect than some people are giving it.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get across.
You got to go into it with a certain frame of mind. And if it doesn't catch you on an emotional level, there's still plenty to appreciate.
Yes. And because I'm not saying if you don't like it, that means you're anti-trans.
No, heavens no.
There's even trans people who are and that's fine because guess what? People aren't a monolith.
Right. Everyone has their own experiences.
Yeah. It's the same with female-led movies. There's some that are great and there's some that are bad. I've heard only sexist people don't like this movie. And I'm like, I guess I'm sexist then because this movie was terrible. Oh man. Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh, man.
That was a bad time for feminism.
It's bad. 2016 was a bad time for a lot of reasons.
Yes. All right. Any last thoughts about I Saw the TV Glow before we exit?
Yeah, no, very, very solid. I was able to get a lot out of it, and I think it did help knowing at least the artist's intent ahead of time. There's a little cheat code there. Can't speak to what I would think of it if I went in fresh, but yeah, no, I liked it.
Okay. So that's that. Next week, I believe we have why can't I say words today? We have Cuckoo, Why does that not sound right?
Cuckoo?
Yeah, but as a word, for some reason, it doesn't sound.
Watching cuckoo.
Yeah, exactly. I should just say it like that. It'll make more sense. Cuckoo and Alien Romulus.
Alien Romulus.
Yeah, words are really hard today. This is what happens when I get towards the end of the episode. I feel like the more we go on and talk, the more I just like it just like becomes a mishmash.
We're tired.
Yeah.
All right.
So those two movies, I'm excited for both. I did go see Trap, but I think I'm gonna leave it for we're gonna have a summer recap coming up where we do Fast and Furious recaps of movies we saw over the summer. We'll see you then.
All
Bye.
right. See you.